Okay, hello everybody. It's Dale Walsh, the Daily Walsh, the Athletic Warrior. Welcome to Straight Sane and Sober for this Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. And I'm very happy and honored to have today as our guest a fellow mental health warrior, Mary NixonHahn, who has just finished her first. Was it your first show today, Mary?
Yes, it was my first show with my first guest. Yep.
And that was at 1 o'clock Eastern time, which is 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I think, English time. So, welcome, Mary. Thanks for coming. You you don't have a mental health warrior name yet, but you are an autism and a veteran advocate, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, great. Well, let me do the intro, and then we'll get down to it. How's that sound? Hi, welcome everybody. It's great to have you here. It's hot and muggy, 90 degrees in New Jersey. And how's the weather with you, Mary?
It's about 82 with about 70% humidity, so I guess we could go with muggy.
Oh, okay, great. Well, as I do always, I'm going to start with a poem. This is from my collection, Fossil Fuel for the Brain, and it's called Tears into Ocean of Memory. Haunted by the ghosts of future days alone, I remember the names and faces of friends I've known and adored, and fast whirlpool of psychosis I've managed to leave behind. Now that I accept a diagnosis and pills, use to balance brain chemicals in my mad mind, content to seek out solitude, even as my heart searches for the soft touch of a lover, spell to body I can caress through hours which remain to discover meaning to the word. So that's one of my older poems, but I think it's a golden oldie. So uh, welcome, Mary. I know you're just coming off your other show, and it's good to have you as a mental health warrior. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thank you, Dale. It's a privilege to be on your show. And yes, back to back shows. Kind of fun being a host and then turn around being interviewed. And I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of the Mental Health Warriors. A little bit about me. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, which is literally about the middle of the USA. So you can do that. I'm a mom. I'm an author. I'm a veteran. I'm also autistic myself, as well as my three sons. I currently am getting wrapped up in the podcast part of my structure for getting information out there and allowing people to know who I am. And I also do a lot of advocating for both veterans and autistic folks. And currently am working with my own son in some different areas with doing some extended schooling as far as high school goes. So I have that. And then I also have two other sons and two grandkids, as well as a daughter-in-law. So pretty much fills up my day.
Well, that sounds great. It sounds like you got a powerful fun. And you were just telling me you've been married for 29 years too, correct?
Yes, 29 years. Lots of communication, lots of up and downs, three kids. Um, just ended a year and a half ago, over 20-year career with the retail industry. And so, yeah, 29 years of what we hope now is the better half. So, yeah, just taking it one day at a time. So,
Well, I once saw a statistic that said that the first 15 years of any marriage are like really basically just getting to know each other. So you're almost double that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And so you so you have three autistic sons, right? And you were diagnosed autistic yourself at a later stage in your life, correct?
Yes, my oldest son was diagnosed in the second grade of school. My second son was diagnosed at around 3 years of age, and my youngest son was diagnosed at 1 month old. And then myself, I was diagnosed at 23 after coming out of the military and dealing with a traumatic brain injury. So, yep, we have a family full, but each one of us are different, so it keeps us unique.
Well, absolutely. And but it seems like your sons haven't let their autism get in the way of leading a productive and normal life. I'm just like thinking about the stereotype, I mean, people say, "Oh, my son is autistic," and it's like a cry of hopelessness. And you're obviously a advocate for autism, but also you're like a living example that doesn't have to be the case. That just because someone is diagnosed with something doesn't mean that their life is over. So
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is, um, when you get the diagnosis, and the diagnosis and stuff gets you the help that you need, at least hopefully. So at some point, you kind of put the diagnosis to the side and you start studying the child themselves. Um, I have learned a lot recently where if I just stand back and watch my kids, each one of them shows me something different that I need to know about them, regardless of their age. And so I've actually learned a lot from just watching my own children. So, yeah.
so with your kids who diagnosed pretty early. Now, did that have an effect on their schooling, or I mean, were they put in like special ed classes, or were they like integrated into the normal system, or how'd that work?
Um, all three of my boys were, they stayed with the mainstream class, but they were taken out for a certain amount of time each week for like occupational physical therapy, speech therapy, and stuff. They tried to keep them integrated as much as possible. Um, the biggest thing for my sons was to realize that it wasn't necessarily about the students around them, but tried to get them to focus on what they needed to do. Obviously, they created enough of friendships with some of the classmates, so it wasn't quite as rough on them. But um, so yeah, they stayed pretty much mainstream, and with their deficiencies in different areas, they were taken aside so that they had opportunity to focus on each individual task that they needed. I had one son that didn't write very well. I had another son that had speech issues. Um, so that they had their full concentration, they were actually taken out of the classroom. And my sons are on the milder end of the spectrum. So when I speak about it, it's from our perspective. I'm not speaking for everybody. So, and
Right.
once you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, because autism is different in everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I feel the same way about schizophrenia. I feel I've been very fortunate to have become as recovered as I am. But, I don't know if you know that movie, A Beautiful Mind. Do you know that movie? But
Yep.
that was like John Nash, who was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, and he was a professor at Harvard. And, he won the Nobel Prize in game theory, I think it was, eventually. But it's his story, and like people would come up to me and say, "What do you think of that? Of A Beautiful Mind as a portrayal of schizophrenia?" I'd say, "Well, it's very good portrayal of his schizophrenia, but it's not my schizophrenia." And I mean, John Nash was always having like hallucinating imaginary figures and everything. I never had an hallucination once. You know, my whole problem was delusion.
Yeah, I totally understand it. And you talk about how you compare something with a movie. A lot of people, when they think of autism, they think of Rain Man. And
Right,
that, yes, it's a good movie, but it's not my son. So on occasion I would get those comparisons, and sometimes I still get those comparisons, and it's like, you know I understand where they want to come from with the movie, but it's not my son, but I understand where they're coming from.
right. Well, so so what you say the oldest son is 19 now, right?
That's my
And
yeah my youngest son is
my
19.
youngest, I meant, yeah. The youngest is 19. So is he out of high school, or what are your sons doing now?
My oldest son works for insurance agency, Mutual of Omaha, and so he's 33. He just turned 33. He's married, has two amazing kids, Kenzie and Bryson, and they live in Omaha, which is about 60 miles from us. And then I have a middle son who is 24, and he is a people greeter slash whatever they have him do. He works uh, roughly part time at Sam's Club. He's been there for almost 6 years. And then my youngest son is what they do. He's doing what they call extended schooling. He's learning how to transition to job related stuff and living skills and stuff like that. So um, on his birthday, August 15th, he will actually start his second year of that. So, and he's progressing really nicely through that. A little bit jealous because he gets to spend 2 quarters each year on the university campus. So
Right,
he gets to work in their dining facilities and stuff. I'm a little jealous. He probably gets to see football players, but that don't mean nothing to him. But you know,
right.
so yeah, he's learning life skills.
Good. And so are there any particular lessons or insights you've had like growing up with your three autistic sons? I mean, I'm sure I know that they're all different and everything, but are there like any incidents or memories that like really stand out for you about their upbringing?
Oh, well, I have to giggle because I was in my husband's shoes for 16 years. He would work days and I would work overnights. And so, when you have two parents that are working different shifts and you have three kids, so you can only imagine the sleep level is not there. I think my biggest memory was when my middle son decided to walk to school, and we thought he had missed the bus, or my youngest son had missed the bus and stuff. So um, that was a little bit heart wrenching because it took us an hour to figure out that the middle son, or the youngest son, got on the bus, and the middle son walked to school without asking for permission. So that was not exactly the highlight of our day. And
Right, right,
so, needless to say, we had a mom and dad discussion about that. And at that time, we were, frazzled by working the different shifts. So it wasn't probably our most productive speech, but we learned from that. And I think another heartbreaking time is when my son graduated from college and decided to move to Bemidji, Minnesota. That's 10 hours away from us. I was like,
right,
are you for real? So, but we did take the time, and we took, before he come back to Nebraska, we got an opportunity to go up and see him and actually see some of the Bemidji Lake and stuff, and spend time with that. So yeah. And then I guess the recent thing that we have for memories is we traveled to Pennsylvania last year and spent 24 hours on the road because we weren't 100% sure how my boys would fly, because none of the boys that I have at home, as well as my husband, had never flown. So we weren't really in the mood to risk that, especially with the youngest son. So got to meet my publisher and editor for my books and some really neat people out there. So yeah, so we got some
nice.
really cool memories. some uh, heart-wrenching moments, but you take one step at a time.
And so tell us about your book.
I actually am. I have two of my own books. I have my first book is From the Inside Out, and I
Okay.
got a nice little glare going there. And then off of that, I made a strategy guide From the Inside Out, and I'm forever 53 in this picture. So those could be found on Amazon. And then I have two collaborations. One is titled I Quit. My chapter in there is I Quit Being Underestimated. And then I also wrote a chapter on grief where I talk about losing my parents 4 months apart. So yes,
Wow.
I'm an author. I really, really appreciate that. And just to know my publisher and editor that every time we do a book together, that those ladies give back to their communities. And so it's well worth my time to have them help me out with that.
Right. So are the books like basically sort of like help guides to like helping with the autistic children, or what's the point? What's the focus of the book?
The topic of my first book, From the Inside Out, is me basically. I set a goal for myself and I learned how to work through retail. I wanted to be an hourly supervisor. And so basically, it takes you from when I first started with the interview process all the way through when I actually achieved my goal. And so, um, and I kind of did different chapters where people could see that it's not easy for an autistic person to necessarily pivot. Um, I also have the chapter that I wrote for the grief edition in there too about my parents so that people could see how the emotions and different stuff would go through that. And then off my book, I made a strategy guide because once I became a member or supervisor, I could see both sides, how somebody would feel overwhelmed and stuff and how they couldn't get from point A to point B. So I asked questions from a associate standpoint, an autistic associate standpoint, and then I would actually answer the questions from a supervisory position and how I felt. So it's kind of a guide to kind of direct people in how to ask questions and get the proper communication that they're looking for.
Cool. Well, yeah, I just admire you so much for like being able to raise three boys, whether they're autistic or not. I mean, my best friend had like at one point, now they're all grown, but at one point he had like 4 children under the age of 6. So, it was like, how do you do this? And, it's like, and he never took credit for it, but he raised them well, and you're the same way. You and your husband raise your children well. They're flourishing, right?
Yep, and they've actually, especially the two older ones, the younger one's still learning, but the two older ones have really become really good self advocates for them. And I think the best part about being their safe place is my oldest son literally just came back to me about a month ago and said, "Hey, Mom, can you help me find a support group for autistic people here in Omaha?" So we're working on an opportunity there for him, and I think he wants to be able to be a part of that community so that if things come along with his kids or even his coworkers, I think he's just trying to figure out how to fit in to communicate better, just within his family dynamic, and being able to uh, give some of what he's feeling to somebody else that may have the same diagnosis or just might have the same empathy and stuff that he does. So it's really
Right.
fun to be a mom and to have your sons come back and ask. And my middle son asks me questions all the time, and so even though they're grown up, you're still their safe zone. So
Right. Well, that's I think self-advocacy and like, standing up and saying, I'm going to not let this illness or this condition like get me down or destroy me is like one of the fundamental one of the fundamental motivations behind recovery. Because I mean, even when I was like in my most psychotic, I always had my healthy side saying, you can get through this. Don't despair. And it's like the self advocacy, I think, is very important to recovery.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. And two, I think being a self advocate, um, we've done a lot of work and stuff, but I think too with the self advocate, and even after your kids learn to advocate for themselves, I think the key one there is they still need to learn to ask for help if they need it. So, and that's been reassuring to me that both my boys are comfortable enough to come back to their mom. So, yeah.
And you seem to be very active in this area in your community too. So why don't you tell about like some some of the things you've done in your community to like now do you feel that there are myths about autism that have to be dispelled, or do you feel that it's just like you have to like know about the illness? I mean, what's your motivation behind these groups and everything?
I think, well, um, I sit on the Autism Family Network board, and I also work with fellow warrior Andrea Evans and stuff. I think the biggest thing is, we talk about mental health and stuff. I think the biggest thing is, like Saturday, we just had a support group, and that's just it. You want to reach out to your communities and bring people in, because I still think people are, they stand on the outside looking in. When you have somebody that's newly diagnosed with autism, the first thing they want to know is, where can I go? And how can I find the help that I need? It's the same way with veterans. Yeah, sure, we have the VAs, but do you have a person like myself who's an advocate that can, you know, the VA is not open 24 hours, but my messenger is, or if you have fortunate enough to have my phone number, I think the biggest thing for me is bringing awareness, not just to my son's awareness, but to all people, you know, all different races and communities, because as much as I see a lot of progress with some of the groups, I'm still learning to understand other groups, because I just want people to know I'm standing there, and it's not about me; it's about we as a group, we as a
Right.
community. And so, um, my biggest thing is I think, and this might end up being my warrior name, but I think my biggest uh, ability is my humbleness and my humble leadership. And I'm a side by side leader, so I try to direct people into a community that they're comfortable with. A lot of times I get folks that are like, well, I don't like this, or I don't like that, I don't like this. So we walk together and we'll go through different communities. Where do you think you fit? So, um, and that's my biggest thing is I just want people to know that I do care, and that I am very passionate about making sure that they get to where they're comfortable, kind of like my sons, and be their own advocates. But those first few months after a diagnosis and stuff, that's the roughest. And so you just try to figure out where they fit, or where they're most comfortable, really.
Well, absolutely. And so your other the other half, or the other part of your advocacy is veterans, and especially with all the people, all the men home now from Afghanistan and Iran and or Iraq, and the whole situation has been I don't know if neutralized is maybe the best word, uh, but uh, so. I know that PTSD, post traumatic stress syndrome, is like one of the major problems that the Army's facing, and how do you feel about that? I mean, obviously you don't like it, but I just think a statistic about that I don't even know if this is true, but I think it is that at one point there were 22 veterans a day committing suicide just because they couldn't take the transition to civilian life, and that's a horrible statistic, and it shows like a lack of lack of understanding on the part not only of the Army but of the whole nation.
Yeah, the stats on that have changed a little bit now. It's 24. I did some research on that, and I follow some veterans on LinkedIn. I think my biggest thing is, you know, I see the PTSD, I see the anxiety, I see the suicide, I see the depression. That's a not a for me. That's not uncommon even in the autistic community. But I think a lot of what happens is, you got homeless veterans out there, and even the veterans that do go through the VA, I think 90% of the time the VA drops the ball, and they think, oh, hey, they're getting enough help, you know. When this veteran, when veterans reach out, to, you know, they're put on a wait list, or nobody gets back to them. They just created a new. It's kind of like 911, where now you can call. I think it's 988 now to get assistance for anybody that's suffering different thoughts and stuff like that. So I think for me the biggest thing is watching somebody have to beg for help. They served
Right,
your country. People have served our country, and they come back and they just get forgotten about. And fortunately here in Nebraska we actually have two VAs, one in Omaha and one in Lincoln, but I still think there's more to be done. Um, you know, I'm only one set of ears, and at some point that's my kind of my dream is to, have veterans and autistic people sit in the same room and have the same discussion, because I think a lot of what people with autism and veterans have a lot that overlap with the PTSD, the depression, the anxiety, and the suicide issues. And so I think my biggest thing is to have even a Zoom where I have, two and two, or to be able to do something like that. And I just think a lot of it is listening. I don't know necessarily that it's a lot about everybody answering, but it's a lot of listening and letting them get that out their chest, and then guiding them to where they need to go to get the different helps and stuff that they need. So I could go on and on about this all day long and probably cry about it, because it's just, to me, it's a sad situation, because most of the time the VA is going to drop the ball. And then I think the biggest thing with me is I want to make something like that a part of our community. So I'm just in the beginning stages of that, just so somebody can come in, have a bag of chips and a Coke, and spend some time with people and just let it go. So
right. Well, I think also another factor is, like basically the whole mental health system in America, at least, and the VA too. They're just swamped. They're overwhelmed with need, and they just can't like handle it because they don't. The government doesn't give it. Well, I shouldn't say. Well, they don't get the resources that they need to be able to give the help they deserve, give people the help they deserve.
right. And even looking, I was looking at some transitional numbers for folks that transferred with the military, and let's just say have autistic kids and stuff, or autistic themselves. I was reading what the Department of Defense had for opportunities for insurance, and literally it's very limited. And so it's like, okay, if you're limited with that, with the children on the spectrum and stuff, then one has to believe that, you know, it's going to be limited for the veterans, you know. So
Right.
it's one of those where I dug a little deeper, and I'm really not liking the numbers that I see even along the autism spectrum, what they have for medical, you know, opportunities for the kids. So yeah, I could sit and cry, because it's one of those where it's like I want to do something, and so I've decided to plant my foot. Now it's just a time to raise the garden, I guess we can look at that.
Right. Well, I just feel that investing in like mental health, for the government to invest in mental health and veterans things, it's ultimately going to be a positive thing, rather than, instead of saying, well, we can't spend this money because it has to go to it has to go to the military or something, or it has to go to something else. That And meanwhile, education and mental health and veterans are all being left out, and it just like it's not right.
Yeah, and
Well,
that's the worst feeling in the world is to be left out. I was like that when I was younger. I was left out of a lot of things, and now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't a bad thing, but I that is the worst feeling in the world. And when I talk with people like yourself, and even like with Trish and some of my mentors and stuff, the last thing I want people to do is to think that I forgot about them, or they forgot about me. That I understand life happens, but it goes back to communication. And if I could set something up where I could just you know show these people even once a week, I'm here. We can sit and talk, we can play games or whatever. I just think it needs to be more common, where you can just allow people to be themselves around you.
right.
That's my youngest son.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, he said hi. he's he's picking up his cards out from behind me. I forgot I had his cards.
Oh, okay. Well, so well, actually, Adam has a question. It says, "What do you think being a part of the Warriors can do to raise more acceptance of autism?"
Yeah. Oh, I think Adam's going to find out, because I have a unique group of people. I was just asked today by my editor to be a part of my group. I think the biggest thing is awareness. And could you do me a favor, Dale, and read the question one more time?
Sure. What do you think being part of the Warriors can do to raise more acceptance of autism?
I think we need to make, which I think I can do. Like I said, I just had some folks ask me. I think the biggest thing is people need to know that there's folks in their areas that can help them. Not necessarily, how do I want to say, not necessarily take total control, but I think through the Warriors, I think because you have a growing group of people, excuse me, growing group of people, I think that um, each person from wherever they're from can grow the awareness, and I think you just need to continue to share. Um, you know, I understand people have accepted us, but I don't think people are aware what it takes, or what autism truly is. And so I think the louder that each one of us speak as advocates, I think people will understand more about autism. And we're not talking just my level with my sons that are mild, or that. I think you just really need to when people come on, you just need to be aware of where they're at. And um, most of the people I will have on are serious advocates. So I think people need to be able to reach out, and the Warriors, being such a diverse group, has that opportunity.
Right. Well, uh, the, the thing, I think that's a very good point, and the people have to be aware of where they can go for help. But I think, at least in my coaching business as a mental health coach for the families of schizophrenia, I think that there's, I think there's like a shame or like a guilt that like haunts a lot of people. If they have like a loved one with autism or schizophrenia or serious mental illness, and that like it makes them very reluctant to like actually reach out and like get the help they need. And I think that's one of the things we have to do as the mental health warriors is to like get rid of that fear of being, judged because you have a loved one who's you know mentally ill, or on autism, or and that's really
Yeah.
something that that's befuddled me, because I know that my coaching can be a very valuable service, but I just can't find the people because they don't want to reach out.
Right. Yeah. And that's the same way with me. I've been fortunate the last year to gain a group of people like Trish I had on earlier and stuff, and knowing that they're going to continue to shout it from the highest mountaintops. But, we can talk about it all you want, but in all reality, how are we going to get them people that are unwilling to talk to you or to reach out to you to get there? So I think you have to take it in baby steps. I think the biggest thing for me is, hey, you know what? I have 3 sons that are autistic. Lately, my big in has been, hey, I'm autistic. How can I help you? Okay,
Right.
it's asking small questions, and to get people to come and be a part of your group. In some cases, it's really, really baby steps, because nobody wants to sit here and do what you and I are doing, talking on a video, because they're going to be afraid to do that. And so that's where I reach out, usually through messenger stuff. But I think it's all about baby steps. And some days those baby steps feel like really, really tiny steps. But if you don't take them, then that person doesn't feel comfortable.
And what might be a baby step for you is a giant leap for someone else. That's the other thing.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And that's just it. It's kind of like the meme that you see on Facebook all the time. You got somebody standing on the mountain, but they're reaching their hand back to help them up. And that's kind of how I like to see that, because the one thing that both my husband and I have always said, I don't want to be the person that's sitting on the pedestal. I want to be the person down here, like God has called me, and to be a helper, to be loving, to be kind. And, you know, whatever progress we make that day is the progress we make that day. You can't discard the progress that you make.
In the trenches rather than in the high command, basically, you're saying.
Yep, yep. Because I'm a side by side leader, Dale. I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, that's the way I've always worked. And when I became a supervisor, that's how I stayed. And the way I'm talking to you is no louder than I talk to anybody else. And that's how I could diffuse situations, because I taught myself not to get so excited. But boy, as soon as I get to my car, I'm like, but that's just it. I think a lot of it is training yourself to meet the person where they're at.
Right. Well, that's true, but I think that meeting a person meeting an autistic person or schizophrenic person where they're at is like very difficult sometimes, because people have no idea where they're at in the first place. I mean, they have all these mass media ideas and everything, but usually those aren't true. They're stereotypes. So It's like, I used to tell people on my college campus I was a schizophrenic all the time, and half the time they would like run away, and half the time they'd be sympathetic. It's just like, it's any condition that's out of the ordinary, I think, scares people.
Yeah, I think if once you take people out of their norm, you know, that becomes a fear factor for them because that's, like you said, a huge step. Um, the one thing I've learned, and I still keep telling myself, is fear really is a liar because once for me, once I did my first podcast with another lady, I was hooked, but I was now I've got to do the little intricacies. Where do I sit in the picture? I don't need to just show my eyes. But I think fear stops a lot of things and a lot of people. And even the simple question, or simple statement, just ask for help, that triggers a lot of fear for a lot of people. And so, sometimes you have to rephrase it and take away that trigger for them too. So,
Well, the other thing about, don't be afraid to ask is, our society has been so focused on like getting rather than receiving, and asking for help is receiving, and I think a lot of people really have difficulty receiving, and but it's it's a give and take. I mean, you can't exhale without inhaling, and there's a balance in life that that you can ask for help and you can give help, but I think a lot more people feel better giving help than they do asking for help.
yeah, too. And I think another stigma that comes after you ask for help, okay, so now you've got them talking, and now they're going to think in their head, and this is the way I was, is, oh man, I don't want to ask this question because I think it's dumb.
Right.
you know so I went there so many times in my career, and every once in a while I still catch myself, oh, that's a dumb question, I'm not going to ask that. you know so you, the biggest thing is there's a lot of triggers with asking for help, and I understand that. And so sometimes I like to rephrase it and go a different route, and so eventually we end up with our end goal. But you know again, I'm not a pushy person, I'm not going to sit and yell at you either, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Right. So, as you're advocating, I know this might be like a sort of an unfair question, but do you have in mind like solutions to like the veterans dilemma, or
I
solutions
have
to like
I have progress. I
right,
don't think honestly there's really ever going to be a solution until our government, I'm going to be blunt here, pulls their head out of their butt, because
right,
um, it's one of those things where I guess for me, I just, you know, the solution is obvious, but people don't care enough, I think. So for me, it's a progressive thing. We take one step at a time. Um, I just, you know, still working on a few of the alternates on that, but I think for me it would be making progress and just being there, um, and being a voice for them, probably obviously along the lines of being an autism advocate, but more along the lines of, yeah, I love my veterans. I've lost a lot of friends as far as that goes, but I'm just going to go with progress at this point, um, and we'll continue to work through that. I'm working on some avenues, so.
so just to pursue. So you say take baby steps and everything. So what's the next step you feel you should take to push forward your goals?
I'm currently working on a connection with some gentlemen with the veterans part of my aspect, um, and seeing where we can come together and see about some different opportunities of funding. So that's my next baby step. Um, I do things a little differently in my world, and my mentors will tell you I'm crazy when I say this, but I see a big picture and I work backwards. And so, what I want, my end goal, I already know what my end goal looks like because God's already given me my end goal. Now He's like, now build it. Okay, so
Right.
here we go. I'm just a little bit backwards on that. And so my next step is to reach out and see which direction we can go as far as hosting something different. Looking at connecting with a VFW that's fairly close to my house
Right.
here, and go there. And so, I think my end game is I'm taking baby steps. So, reaching out to see if I can have some other assistance. So I'm not like the lone wolf doing this. So
Right. Well, there's that famous quote: "If you want to go far, go alone. But if you want no, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go in a group." And I
yeah,
think that that's really what it comes down to. And I agree completely. I mean, the best way to plan is to like see what your big plan is, and then work backwards and see what take the little steps until you can like take larger steps. And but ultimately I think that envisioning or knowing what the end goal is, the end result is like basically the only real way to plan successfully.
right, right. Yeah, that is. And you know, the one thing I can never really plan on what a life looks like for my sons. So that's where you take each, each step a little bit at a time. Because I don't know. Okay, only God knows what their end goal is going to be. And so, you know, um, but yeah, I just I need to stop. I'm going to end up crying here, but it's one of those where it's like the end goal looks amazing. Now let's get there. So
Right. Well, my end goal is sort of the same thing, is to like be. I mean, my big end goal is to like set up some sort of like coaching school for the family, for like the seriously mental ill. And like just as I try to address families with schizophrenia, to have like a bunch of coaches with who overcome their diagnosis. And like so a bipolar coach would be with the bipolar family, and a depression coach would be with a depressive family. So that's my big goal, but it's no closer now than it was about 2 years ago. But I am getting in a better financial situation, so we'll see what happens. But I am very ambitious that way.
yeah, no, I understand that. And sometimes, you know, I have to extend the arm of asking for help, and I have no problems with asking for help. So it's one of those where it's like, oh, yep, I see it. I see it. I believe I see it. Now it's just taking the steps. So,
So, Annette, hi Annette, it's nice to have you here. And Adam, and Annette says on the chat, she says, I love so many autistic people. One girl took offense being called autistic. She just wanted to be addressed as normal, and I like that she spoke up about that.
yeah,
So,
yep. A lot of people do. My boys, they don't, they don't announce themselves as autistic, and everybody I work with and stuff, they don't see them any differently than you or I. So, I've been blessed in that, but I've also laid with a little kid on the floor that's having a meltdown where everybody's staring. So I've been there and I've done that. I totally appreciate that, and each child is going to speak up with how they want to be known. And my boys will tell you, John, since he was 3, he will tell you all 3 of his names. I'm Jonathan Samuel Hahn. Okay, dude. you know, and that's what he wants to be called by. My sons will tell you, and when they were younger, they would tell you quite loudly.
right.
So,
Well, my experience has been it's good to have a diagnosis, but when you let the diagnosis become your personality and your identity, then it's really dangerous. And that's what I did for many years. Instead of saying I'm a person with schizophrenia, I would say I'm a schizophrenic, and that just like colored my whole world until I broke out of it. But that's one thing that I'm still working on, is getting out of the head of the diagnosis and the label to be able to see the real me.
Yep. And that's, a lot of people will make comments every once in a while, and people are word specific, and I totally understand word specific and the pronouns and stuff. But in the end, I am me,
Right.
Take me as I am, or, I can agree to disagree, but I am me. So.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mary. This has been a very stimulating conversation. Do you have any parting words before we wrap up, or?
Take one step at a time, one day at a time. If you see somebody needs help, reach down, help them up, and always be true to yourself.
Well, that's very good advice, and that's a very good way to end the show, I think. So thank you very much, and just keep up the good work, and keep up the God's work, and thank you very much, and bless you.
All right. Thank you, and have a great day, Dale.
Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much, everybody.